3 spine-chilling true night shift encounters, terrifying secrets revealed in cursed darkness. Every night, as Sarah unlocked the glass doors of the Maplewood convenience store, she felt the weight of unease settle over her like a thick fog. The crickets that once chirped cheerily outside now seemed to hush, anticipating the unsettling experiences that awaited her inside. Shadows played tricks in the flickering fluorescent lights, casting eerie shapes that twisted and turned, nearly mocking her fatigue. She forced herself to breathe, the comforting aroma of fresh coffee swirling around her, but she couldn't shake the anxiety creeping up her spine. Something felt off, and she was suspicious of the quiet. As the clock ticked away the lonely hours, a tall figure appeared in the bustling silence. The man, forever donning a faded baseball cap and a worn jacket, walked the aisles like a ghost, his hollow gaze forever focused on the floor. He paid for snacks always in cash, always at odd hours. Customers would glance at him, a shiver of fear evident in their eyes, as they hurried through their purchases. Sarah felt the knot of dread tightening in her stomach, but she forced herself to dismiss it. Just exhaustion, she whispered under her breath, trying to calm the chaos in her mind. Then there was Mrs. Collins, her old neighbor who lingered outside far too often, watching Sarah and Jake from her balcony. A friendly wave felt more like a warning. Every lingering gaze exchanged between the two women heightened Sarah's paranoia. Hours of concern chased her around the store like phantom whispers. She tried to brush it off, yet the pit in her stomach wouldn't fade. Then came Officer Martin, an affable presence that gave her a fleeting sense of security. He'd enter the store casually, purchase a pack of gum, and regale her with chilling stories of Maplewood's dark past, unanswered disappearances and lost souls that still wandered the streets. Each tale sent shivers down her spine, making her heart race with fear. As he spoke, the shadows grew thicker, wrapping themselves around her like a vice. The haunting echoes of his warnings rang in her ears, and she began to feel like a player in a twisted game, where the rules were solely based on survival. But things took a notorious turn when Lisa, her coworker, vanished without a trace. Whispers filled the air like poison, each conversation laced with dark insinuations of her involvement in the unsettling events that shook the community. The Oakmont Theater, once a lively place, now felt like a pit of despair. Sarah noticed the lack of interest in her once vibrant surroundings, sights and sounds fading into a blurred veil of anxiety. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The store's glass doors sealed her in, the sometimes calm night shuddering beneath the weight of her fears. Just as she thought she could make sense of it all, another ominous text blinked on her screen, sent from Lisa's number. You shouldn't have dug too deep, Sarah. They are watching you. Her heart dropped as she glanced out the window, the darkness stretching like a hungry beast, waiting for its feast. What had started as a routine night shift now felt like a descent into madness, with shadows closing in and her son, Jake, left vulnerable in the storm. Would she be able to navigate through the darkness that had consumed her once quiet life? Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The phone trembled in her hand, the screen illuminating her face like a ghostly lantern. They are watching you. The words dripped with menace. Who was watching? Why? She had to shake off the fear clawing at her, but it curled around her like a suffocating shroud. Frantically looking around the dim store, she glanced at the clock. 2:03 a.m. Only a few more hours to go. The thought gave her a flicker of hope, but it was quickly snuffed out when the old bell above the doors jingled, announcing a new visitor. Sarah felt her heart pound in rhythm with the sound. The man in the baseball cap stood there, a shadow in the doorway, backlit by the pale street light outside. He stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate, like he was testing whether the ground would give way beneath him. She felt her body tense up. His presence had always felt strange, but tonight it was more pronounced, like a tangible force pressing against her chest. "Can I help you?" she managed to ask, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the tremor inside that he approached the counter, eyes still cast down. "Just some chips," he mumbled. As he placed the crinkled bag on the counter, his fingers brushed against hers. The sensation sent chills skittering across her skin. She flinched, snatching her hand back, and a shiver of apprehension washed over her amidst the stale air. As she rang up the purchase, she glanced out the window again. The darkness beyond seemed somehow deeper. Each shadow flickering at the edge of her vision felt alive, breathing in the night, watching her. "Did you know about Lisa?" the man suddenly asked, his voice low and gravelly. Her gaze snapped back to him, surprise flooding her expression. "What do you know about Lisa?" "Too much curiosity can get you into trouble," he replied, still avoiding her eyes. "Be careful who you trust or who you linger with after dark." The weight of his words sank like lead in her stomach, and she felt the color drain from her face. With no time for a response, she quickly processed his payment, handing him the change with trembling fingers. Once he had the chips, he lingered for a moment longer, glancing over his shoulder at the entrance. "Be safe, Sarah," he said quietly before he melted into the shadows outside. The store clock chimed again, the sound cutting through the tension. Her heart raced. She had to leave. Just leave and go home to Jake. But as she turned to gather her things, the faint ringing of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Another text? Panic surged within her as she looked, expecting more threats. But this one was different. It came from an unknown number. "They're closer than you think." Her blood ran cold. A frisson of dread rippled through her. Who was this? How did they know her? Without conscious thought, she stepped toward the door, her instinct urging her to escape the suffocating atmosphere. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the silhouette of a figure standing just beyond the threshold, partially obscured by the night. What now? Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she realized she wasn't racing toward safety. Instead, she was headed straight into the clutches of the very darkness she feared. In a desperate bid, she turned on her heel, ready to bolt, but stopped dead in her tracks at the sight behind her. An array of unfamiliar faces pressed against the glass, their expressions twisted into vacant, unnerving stares. The store felt suddenly smaller, claustrophobic, as terror gripped her completely. What had she unknowingly provoked? And what did they want? In that moment, the weight of the lurking dread settled upon her. She was not alone. Were they watching, or waiting? The shadows morphed, pulsating with a life of their own. Sarah's eyes darted across the store. The faces outside pressed closer, their breath fogging the glass. An icy chill gripped her. She could see their eyes wide, empty, unblinking. Each gaze felt like a dagger, piercing right into her soul. Her phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up her face like a beacon. "Turn around," it said. Panic surged. Was this another taunt? Or was she truly trapped in a game far beyond her comprehension? "Hey!" she shouted, her voice cracking. "What do you want?" No one replied. The figures just stared, mouths moving silently. Sarah felt her heart thundering in her chest, a wild drum echoing against the walls of the small convenience store. Her hands trembled as she reached for the phone again, hoping to call for help. But as she pressed the screen, there was no signal. Just the dreaded spinning wheel, mocking her helplessness. A sudden movement outside caught her eye. One of the faces stepped forward, emerging from the shadows like a specter rising from the grave. Tall and looming, he swayed slightly, as if he were being pulled forward by a force unseen. As he reached the door, the old bell above it jingled again, a sound tinged with grim irony. Before she could think, Sarah bolted behind the counter, crouching down, heart racing. Maybe, just maybe, she could hide. She couldn't let them see her fear. The store was too small for this kind of nightmare. Another text flashed on her phone, this time, a video. With trembling hands, she clicked it open, unwillingly drawn to the chaos on her screen. After a second, the image sharpened to reveal a dimly lit room. In the middle, a familiar face stared blankly into the camera. It was Lisa. Her hair was disheveled, eyes wide with terror. "We're coming for you, Sarah," Lisa whispered, her voice cracking. The frame flickered, glitching for a moment before the video cut out, leaving a ringing silence, her breath hitched in her throat. Despite the habitual anxiety thrumming through her veins, she felt a pull to help Lisa, to understand her last message. Then it dawned on her, the man in the cap. His warning echoed in her mind. "Be careful who you trust or who you linger with after dark." Was Lisa even alive? An image of her cold, lifeless form sent shivers cascading down Sarah's spine. She couldn't think like that. She had to focus. In a moment of desperate courage, she crawled out from behind the counter, heart pounding in her ears. Gathering every ounce of resolve, she peered over the merchandise to see the figures now gathered by the door. They weren't moving. Just standing still, as if waiting for something. What were they waiting for? Suddenly, the door swung open, a creaking proclamation that echoed through the stillness. A woman stepped in, her features obscured by a dark hood. The air seemed to thicken with tension, as if time itself halted. "Time's almost up, Sarah," the woman said, voice low and melodic. "You've been chosen." Chosen? For what? Before Sarah could process the words, the din of muffled whispers erupted around her, vibrating with an urgency that set her instincts into overdrive. She had to escape. As she backed away, her foot caught on something, a slick, cold surface. A gasp escaped her lips as she realized she was not alone in her own sanctuary. There, lying beneath the counter, was something wrapped in a dark fabric. It pulsed faintly, eerily similar to a heartbeat. What had she stumbled into? As she moved to pull it free, a voice whispered in her ear, sending ice coursing down her spine. "Hurry, it's almost too late." What awaited her? Her hand trembled as it grasped the fabric, ready to unveil the secrets hidden within. Her fingers brushed against the fabric. It felt oddly warm, a stark contradiction to the icy fear gnawing at her insides. With a swift, almost desperate motion, she tugged it free. The material unraveled to reveal a heart, the real, pulsing organ of a human being. Blood dripped slowly onto the floor, glistening like dark rubies against the dull tile. Sarah recoiled, bile rising in her throat. This wasn't just a macabre prank. This was something far more sinister. "Leave it!" A voice barked from the shadows, and a figure stepped forward. A man, face concealed by the same ominous hood as the woman, stood with a menacing grin. "You don't want to know what lies beneath." The store was closing in on her. The whispers intensified, becoming a cacophony of frantic warnings and haunting laughter that filled her ears. She could hardly hear her own racing heartbeat. "Put it back," he commanded, stepping closer. Panic ignited within her. Sarah dropped the heart, but it didn't land silently. Instead, it seemed to pulse faster, a quickened rhythm that drowned out the whispers. The figures outside pressed aggressively against the glass, hands reaching, faces contorted in eerie glee. "Now you've done it," the man sneered, his grin widening. He turned to the crowd outside, gesturing dramatically, and they erupted in raucous, chilling laughter. In that instant, clarity struck. They were feeding off her fear, drawing strength from her panic. Sarah couldn't be their prey. She had to fight back. "Leave me alone!" she screamed, her voice raw with desperation, and she bolted toward the back door of the store. Behind her, the man's laughter followed her like a shadow. "You can't run from the chosen." She flung the door open, the hinges creaking ominously, and dashed into the cool night air. The chill didn't calm her, instead, it heightened her fear. The street was deserted, a stark contrast to the chaos in the store. She sprinted down the road, heart pounding, legs burning. The distant laughter faded, but she could still feel their eyes on her, hungry and waiting. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet shifted. Beneath the streetlights, the pavement cracked open, oozing a black, viscous substance that pulled at her sneakers. She stumbled, nearly falling into the depths of the fissure. "Help me!" she cried, but there was no one to hear her. Only the shadows closing in around her, whispering promises and threats. Desperately, she clawed her way back up, gripping onto the concrete. And just as she managed to pull herself free, a chilling gust of wind howled down the empty street. It carried the whispers, growing louder and louder, until all she could hear were the demands of the shadows: "Turn back. Turn back." Heart racing, Sarah made a frantic decision. She darted down an alley, breathless and filled with dread. Was this escape or just another trap? In her frantic rush, she stumbled upon an old, abandoned building. The windows were cracked, the door ajar. A dim light flickered within, a beacon she couldn't resist but couldn't trust either. "Please," the shadows whispered. "Come inside." Her instincts screamed to turn away, yet a morbid pull beckoned her to step through the threshold. What awaited inside? A refuge or deeper horrors? With no time for hesitation, Sarah took a breath and stepped forward, uncertainty washing over her. She had to know the truth. But as the door creaked shut behind her, the darkness whispered in her ear once more, "Welcome home, Sarah." The door slammed shut behind Sarah with a finality that echoed in the hollow space of the abandoned building. The dim flickering light came from an old bulb, barely holding on, sputtering like the last breath of a dying flame. Dust motes hovered thick in the air, illuminated by the weak glow, giving the room an otherworldly feel. "Hello?" Her voice trembled, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The wind outside howled, rattling the broken windows as if the night itself was trying to intrude. Shadows stretched and contorted on the walls. Cold seeped into her skin, it felt alive, wrapping around her limbs like icy fingers. There was something here, something watching, and then she heard its soft, shuffling footsteps. Her heart raced as the noise grew, inching closer. "Sarah," a voice floated out, eerily familiar, slithering into her consciousness. "Come play with us." She stiffened. It was the voice of the woman from the store, warped and chilling. "What do you want?" Sarah called out, her tone caught somewhere between defiance and terror. "Join us," the voice echoed through the darkness, teasing, taunting. The laughter of the crowd filled her mind again, a cacophony of glee that made her skin crawl. But this time, it felt closer, intimate. She squinted into the darkness, straining to see. A shadow moved, darting between the remnants of furniture and dust-covered debris. Just then, the dim light flickered out completely, leaving her in suffocating darkness. Panic surged. "Stop it!" she screamed, hands trembling as she fumbled for the wall to steady herself, heart thundering in her ears. The shadows danced around her, whispering secrets that twisted and turned, each word a dagger of fear. Beneath her feet, the floor creaked ominously, boards sagging like they could give way at any moment. She had to move. But where? The door was behind her, a mere memory of safety. "Escape," the whispers insisted. "Turn back while you can." Suddenly, a cold, clammy hand gripped her wrist, tight as a vice. Sarah gasped, struggling against the grip. "Let go of me!" she shouted, fear igniting her voice into a fiery ring of defiance. She twisted and pulled until her arms slipped free. Desperate, she sprinted deeper into the building. The shadows chased her, creeping along the walls. They felt alive, pulsating with a dark energy. The space was an endless maze of terror, every twist revealing unfamiliar corners and sinister remnants of the past. "Leave me alone!" she cried, tears stinging her eyes. A door came into view, slightly ajar, old hinges creaking an eerie invitation. She lunged for it, throwing it open with abandon. Inside was a room bathed in a sickly green light, filled with strange symbols scrawled on the walls, the air thick with an ancient, musty stench. On the floor lay objects, rusty knives, broken dolls, and crumpled photographs that began to swirl in her mind, faces twisted in anguish, screams frozen in time, no hope for release. They were trapped in the remnants of this place, just like her. "Sarah, we are waiting." The voice lingered in her mind, a haunting echo, rising above the swells of panic. She stepped back, wanting to flee but knowing she had to understand. But what truth was waiting in that room? A chill crawled up her spine. She turned to escape but was met by an unyielding darkness blocking her way. The shadows swarmed, closing in around her, the laughter morphing into shrieks of horror. Playing is so much more fun together. As the first shadow lunged, her breath caught in her throat, heart pounding like a war drum. She scrambled for an escape, one last chance from this malevolence that wanted to devour her whole. "Help me!" she screamed, desperation spilling from her lips, but perhaps, Sarah realized too late, it was already too late for help. The shadows surged forward, darkness consuming her. What had she awakened within these walls? Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, a reflexive attempt to block out the looming darkness, but it only amplified the terror. The shadows surged, shifting and swirling into forms that mocked her. 1,000 whispers coiled around her, each one dragging her deeper into despair. She staggered back, desperate for distance, but the walls of the room felt like they were closing in. "Let me go!" she cried, the words barely escaping her parched throat. The cold air began to thrum with energy, twisting into a storm of rage that pounded against her senses. It felt alive, a chaotic presence that buzzed with an insatiable hunger. Shadows flickered faster, darting in and out of her vision, distorted faces shimmering in the darkness for only a fleeting second before fading back into the void. She stumbled towards a window, the glass clouded and filthy, but she could just make out the howling wind and the faint glow of her hometown beyond the building's decaying walls. Was that a flicker of hope? Or just another macabre trick? "Sarah!" The voice of the woman shrieked again, closer now, its tone full of rage and deceit. "You can't escape. You belong to us." The room seemed to tremble with the force of the unseen entity's words. A chill surged through her, deeper than any cold she had felt before. It felt like ice creeping under her skin, paralyzing her will to fight. But she refused to succumb. "Get away from me!" she shouted, her voice strong despite the quivering in her knees. Grabbing a rusty knife from the floor, she raised it defensively. The blade glinted in the sick green light, a last sign of defiance. As if sensing her resolve, a shadow lunged forward, gnarled fingers reaching towards her. The air crackled, and Sarah swung the knife wildly, landing a glancing blow. A screech filled the room, sharp and piercing, sending vibrations through the floor. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw it, something so alien and terrifying that her mind recoiled. Eyes hollow, skin stretched against a bony frame, it recoiled and hissed, twisting back into the darkness. "Why do you resist?" it hissed, the other voices echoing with menace. "You could have played with us." The knife fell from her hands as terror flooded her thoughts. She had to move, had to find a way out. Shoving open the door she had entered through, she stumbled back into the main corridor. But the shadows clung to her like a fever, wrapping around her legs and pulling her back. With every step she took, they lashed out on her blurred edges, longing to drag her into their abyss. Each door she passed felt impossibly heavy, as if they too were tainted with whatever darkness had consumed the building. The fluorescent lights flickered wildly overhead, illuminating spaces that twisted in and out of her memory. The laughter echoed once more, shrill and merciless, and for a moment, she hesitated. Faces formed in the shadows, a crowd of laughter that pricked at her sanity. Friends? Family? No. Those faces belonged to the past, to those that this cursed place had absorbed over the years, a haunting reminder that she was not the first to wander in. "Join us," they whispered in unison, voices caressing her soul like a sinister lullaby. Just as she thought she would succumb, she spotted another door, an exit sign barely visible in the green gloom. Heart thrumming, hope reigniting, she pushed herself to it. As she reached for the handle, a searing pain shot through her back, a cold grip that pulled her away. She gasped, twisting around to face the shadows once more. Not yet. The voice dripped with glee. You have so much more to see. The world blurred and she realized she was being dragged back into that nightmare. The more she fought, the tighter the shadows held her. Please. She sobbed, fighting against the grip that threatened to devour her soul. But the clamor of laughter drowned her out, shoving her back into the dark. Time lost all meaning, and she couldn't tell if moments had passed or if eternity began to unfold. As the darkness loomed closer, she felt a surge of desperate strength. Maybe she wouldn't escape. Maybe she was destined to join the crowd, but she would not do so quietly. Let me go. She screamed, voice breaking through the cacophony. And in that moment, there was silence. The shadows halted mid-lunge, drawn back as if held by an unseen force. She felt their astonished gaze, a pause in the relentless tide, and it was enough. Now you're one of us, they whispered, confusion spinning through the air. Fighting against the darkness, Sarah took a shuddering breath. But as she braced herself to charge for freedom, the green light flickered and dimmed completely, swallowed whole, as something deeper, darker, stirred within the building. What lay waiting in the void? Was she still alive, or had she crossed into a new realm entirely? The absence of light was all-consuming. Sarah's heart pounded in rhythm with the chaos echoing around her, a frantic drum urging her to do something, anything. Panic clawed at her throat, and she staggered back, fighting the grip of despair that threatened to pull her under. Suddenly, a faint glow emerged from the far corner of the room. A flickering candle, its sickly yellow flame casting eerie shadows on the walls. It danced and swayed, illuminating fragments of a past Sarah dreaded to confront. Images twisted beneath its light, a child's laughter echoing softly, the ghost of a family gathering, lines of love disintegrated into despair. Stop it! She yelled, clenching her fists. This isn't real. But the shadows persisted, sliding into view, their claims tightening as if woven into the very fabric of the building. Faces rose before her, some familiar, others alien, each contorted, whispering their stories, begging her to listen. You can't run from us. The shadows coiled around Sarah like a serpent. We are your memories, your fears. Gripping the edge of the cold, metal table nearby, Sarah forced herself to breathe. She needed clarity, and perhaps the candle was a clue, a glimmer of hope amidst despair. Raising her voice, she called out, "What do you want from me?" With that question, the air grew still. The shadows hesitated, their whispers fading into a chilling calm. She sensed a shift, something lurking behind them. The candlelight flickered, revealing a monstrous figure formulating in the depths, a presence that seemed to reject the very concept of light. Your truth, it rumbled, the voice deep and resonant as it shaped a convolution of laughter and agony. You cannot overcome without facing it. Sarah felt cold sweat pooling at her temples. My truth? You want my truth? She swallowed hard, the weight of her past crashing over her like harsh waves. She remembered every regret, every mistake. Those moments had become the shadows, the lurking fear transforming into a ravenous appetite. You will share your truth, the figure hissed, each word a cold caress that threatened to expose her deepest secrets. Only then can you leave this place. Overwhelmed, she closed her eyes. Voices surged back, urging her to hide, to succumb. No more. She screamed. I can't. I won't give you that. The flame sputtered, responding to her horror, illuminating even darker forms, twisted figures, skeletal faces reaching out, hungry for her confession. The laughter crescendoed, morphing into cries of anger and despair, as if they were betrayed by her resistance. Sarah's heart raced. You think you can control me? She spoke with a ferocity she didn't know she possessed. Each exclamation pushed against the fear washing over her, forming walls against the shadows that sought to invade her mind. She remembered running through fields, laughter with her friends, summer days drawing her to life. But lurking at the edges were ghosts. Friends lost, choices made in haste, bridges burned. Accept them. A voice thundered, rising above the chorus. Or lose them all. Fine. She shouted, fists clenched. I remember. But I want to be a prisoner of my past. In that resolute moment, she blinked, the shadows dimming slightly. But the figure laughed, a sound that echoed chillingly. Defiance is futile. They thrive on your pain. You are only delaying the inevitable. Just when Sarah thought the torment would shatter her spirit, a pulse of energy surged through her. It felt distinct, not of the shadows but from within, a warmth igniting like a fire catching hold among dead embers. I want to be afraid. She shouted into the void, channeling the urgency of reclaimed courage. At that instant, the candle flickered wildly, and the towering figure recoiled as if struck. The shadows shrieked, their laughter twisting into hollers of anger. The room convulsed around her, the walls vibrating as if the entire structure was alive with the chaos. Leave me! She cried, and for the first time, she felt a shift in control. The shadows writhed, thinning slightly. It was a chance, a fleeting opportunity to escape their clutches, but as she surged forward, something emerged from the darkness, a sinister tendril wrapping around her ankle. The echoes of laughter returned, sharper, and Sarah realized the figure hadn't been vanquished. It had been enraged. Your secrets will be your ruin, it bellowed, voice intertwining with the shadows, pulling them all back. In that moment, she sensed at the sharp edge of despair facing her and the fragile hope of truth. Sarah took a deep breath and shouted, louder than ever before, I will not be your host. What response awaited her? Would her voice shatter their grip, or would the shadows reclaim their terror? The suffocating tension thickened as she felt the truth she had once feared pulling her back, preparing to consume her whole. Could she uncover the light hidden in her shadows before it was too late? The moment hung, thick with dread. Sarah felt the tendril pull tighter around her ankle, cold and serpentine, anchoring her down. Breath quickened, panic surging. The shadows, now a wall of darkness, seemed to pulse in response, hungry for the fear she was desperate to suppress. Let go! She screamed, kicking, her heart racing like a caged animal. The figure writhed, a monstrous silhouette against the flickering candlelight, its laughter a sinister refrain echoing in her ears. Your truth is what we seek, it hissed, breath reeking of decay. Without it, you shall never escape. She wrestled with the tightening grip, feeling the pressure seep into her lungs, weigh down her spirit. I refuse to let you win. She screamed, forcing her voice louder than the clamoring whispers and twisting shadows. In that heightened moment, something shifted, an energy thrumming beneath the surface, igniting her resolve. She thought of the warmth she felt, bursting forth in defiance, a flicker amidst the overwhelming dark. I am not your prisoner. Her voice echoed, sharp and piercing as a siren in the night. As the words left her lips, the shadows convulsed, the tendril loosening just enough for her to stumble backward. Yet the laughter echoed louder, transforming into a pulsation of agony. You cannot run from the past. It binds you. And we shall feast upon your pain. The shadows surged forth, their faces distorting, morphing into those she had lost, memories she buried deep. The eyes of her lost friends cut into her, hollow yet pleading. Help us, Sarah, their voices melded, a haunting chorus threading through her mind. No! She shouted, gripping the edge of the table, brittle against the weight of nostalgia. I want to let you pull me back. But doubt seeped in, creeping like fog across her thoughts. Each acknowledgement of her truth felt like an anchor pulling her beneath the waves. Flashes of regret, the boy she never called back, the friendship she let die, the family rift that never healed rushed past her like a relentless tide, threatening to drown her in remorse. Face them. The figure roared, its various forms coiling, merging, expanding into a grotesque visage. The shadowy limbs reached for her once more, the air electric with intent. Or be consumed by them. Panic flooded back, a wave crashing over her. She could almost taste the despair, salty and bitter, but then clarity struck. I am more than my mistakes. The shadows froze, the laughter echoing into a stunned silence. What did you say? I am more. I'm not defined by my past. The candle flared, its light brightening the room for a brief heartbeat, shadow figures momentarily illuminated in sharp clarity. She inhaled deeply, her newfound strength aligning her thoughts. Every misstep, every regret, these were lessons, not jails. I embrace you, old ghosts. You taught me. You don't own me. Force behind her words drove back some of the malevolent shapes. The grip around her ankles slackened further, and Sarah felt the pressure release. Submit. The figure thundered, rage echoing off the walls. You can't break free without suffering. But Sarah's resilience surged. I choose my own path. You'll not take me. With determination, she lunged forward, breaking the remaining grasp of darkness. The shadows shrieked, roaring their outrage as she barreled toward the candle, that flickering beacon. Each step propelled by a fierce urgency to reclaim not only herself but also her right to move beyond pain. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the candle, an explosion of energy that bathed the room in brilliant white. But just as hope soared within her chest, she heard it, a whisper coiling through the brilliance, sinister and soft. You may have escaped for now. But a greater darkness awaits. Her heart plummeted. What new horror lurked beyond? Before she could react, the light dimmed, shadows pooling once more, and a new presence pressed against her, thicker, heavier, a weight so suffocating it felt as if the very walls were closing in. What awaited in this new domain? If she thought she could escape one darkness, was she trading it for an even deeper nightmare? A chilling stillness enveloped Sarah, as if the air itself had conspired to suffocate her. The shadows writhed, coalescing into a darker entity, swirling dervishes of despair and anguish intent on binding her once more. The flickering candle flared dimly, illuminating faces that twisted in mockery, the laughter morphing into a cacophony of screams. Did you think this was the end? A hollow voice taunted from the depths of the gathering darkness. Each syllable dripped with venom, curling around her senses. This is merely the threshold of your real existence, a realm in which truth is a dagger sharp enough to carve your soul apart. She felt the weight of their words, but fire surged through her veins. You don't control me, she spat, gripping the edges of her true self more fiercely, even as shadows slithered closer, wrapping around her limbs like cold, razor-thin chains. Truth is not freedom. It's a prison. The figure's voice boomed again, its form shifting, pulsating with intimidation. It drew nearer, the chill from its presence feeling like a gust of wind from the grave. Your past will claw its way back, Sarah. Suddenly, the darkness recoiled. It seemed to shrink as she boldly faced the swirling mass, summoning her will deeper than before. Bring it on. I faced my ghosts and I can do it again. And with that defiance, she charged straight into the heart of the chaos. With each step, an otherworldly pulse surged through her, the room almost vibrating with the emergence of her willpower. The shadows screamed, an orchestra of thrashing whispers that clawed at her ears, but she held her ground, trembling yet fierce. Face us, Sarah. The figure demanded, transforming into swirls of mist that steeped into new visions of regret. Like a movie reel, her life toxic with memories unfolded, each image sharper and more vivid than the last. There was the boy she ignored at the party, his smile fading before her eyes. The confrontation with her mother at the kitchen table, words like glass shattering the silence. And her friends, once bright sparks, now flickered like dying embers. Stop it! She yelled, wrapping her arms around her head. The dread crashed down on her, taunting her. You don't own my heart, you don't define who I am. With a powerful shake, she remembered. Each memory was not just a haunting reminder. They were flavors of life, complex, tangled, and imperfect. They made me stronger. She declared, and with that affirmation, an undulating fire ignited within her, casting a fierce light that repelled the approaching darkness. The shadows screeched, sizzling against her inner warmth. "No! You shall not burn us away. We are the essence of your truth." But in that moment of fierce clarity, a new understanding surged. Pain was just part of living. She began to accept instead of deny. The walls shook with her transformation, and beams of light flared out, forcing the mass of darkness backward. Yet, just as the air cleared, a thundering upheaval rattled around her. Something deeper stirred, an unseen monster lurking, eager to seize the moment of her vulnerability. Was it just the horrors of her past, or was there indeed something more sinister that lay in wait? Fear crept back as she instinctively shivered, toes curling at an instinctive warning. The shadows regained strength, rallying as if answering a call from the void. "Your greatest nightmares have yet to reveal themselves, Sarah." The walls trembled now, not with light, but with a promise of doom. What was this new presence whispering from the abyss? A heavy growl echoed, resonating deep within her bones. It was approaching, and it hungered for her unraveling. The darkness convulsed but, for a moment, Sarah felt a flicker of power surge through her. Emotions and regrets began to crystallize, no longer shadows of her life but lessons that carved pathways to resilience. Gritting her teeth, she refused to surrender to despair. "I want to be a prisoner." She screamed into the night, pushing against the icy tendrils clutching her throat. In that electrifying moment, the thunderous growl drew nearer, filling her senses with a visceral dread. The entity emerging from the depths of the darkness was no mere shadow. It felt like a storm, a living, breathing force of malice twisting her fears into a tangible weapon. But determination coursed within her veins like fire. "You want to take me." The air crackled with energy, and she gripped the shards of defiance. Blinking back tears of fear and resolve, she stood tall despite the encroaching darkness that loomed above, threatening to squeeze the light from her core. The darkness swirled, forming a colossal figure that draped itself in shadows, obscuring its true face. "You think you can escape me?" It boomed, every word a strike, shaking the very ground beneath her. Pushing through the fear, she clenched her fists, ready to fight back against the weight of her past. "I am greater than my past," she roared, and in that declaration of life, a shaft of brilliant light exploded from within her. It cascaded across the floor, illuminating the grotesque figure, revealing a creature woven from her deepest anxieties. Fear flashed through its darkened eyes as the light pierced it. "It's not just darkness you're facing. It's the truth." With each breath Sarah took, the warmth enveloped her, pushing back against the creature that thrived on her hesitation. "I faced my mistakes. I survived and I will survive this." The shadows recoiled as her radiant light expanded, engulfing the room in a warm glow. The sinister whispers that once jeered at her began to fade into the background, stunned into silence. The entity screeched, swirling into a vortex, retreating from her burn of unwavering hope. But just as victory shimmered like dawn on the horizon, a shudder rattled the very foundation around her. The abyss screamed, "You think this is freedom?" The walls trembled, and her pulse raced as cracks began to spiderweb in the tiles, nearly swallowing her whole. "Only one of us can exist here," it howled, fury echoing in the shadows, as they shimmered to life once more, merging into vortexes of chaos. "No!" She thrust her hands forward, pushing against the darkness, tears blurring her vision. "You will not bind me anymore." The shadows drew within her as the ground cracked, wild energy swirling in a chaotic dance. Memories flooded her mind, laughter, joy, and traditional family moments. Her child, Jake's laughter resonated deep within, anchoring her spirit. "I will protect him." She remembered, and propelled by love, she conjured every ounce of her inner strength. With a last defiant scream, she launched herself into the light, the power of her spirit bursting through the cracks in the darkness. For an instant, everything stood still. The shadows gasped, plotting their next move, but she thrust forward, igniting bright energy that shattered the darkness on impact. light exploded in every direction, consuming the darkness, scattering its pieces like ashes in the wind. "Go back to where you came from," she declared, her voice resonating with a strength that radiated from her core. The shadowy mass shrieked as it splintered apart, unmoored from her grasp. And then, back into the void, it fell, surrendering to the recesses of her past, shriveling under the brilliance of acceptance that shone in her heart. Breathless, trembling, Sarah staggered forward. Light wrapped around her, vines of warmth embracing her as she emerged into a reality that felt more vibrant, more real than before. She blinked against the brightness, the soft dawn filtering through cracks in the old building. Above her, the darkness faded like a whisper lost in the wind. She had risen from it, not merely alive but transformed. She stepped outside into a vibrant morning, the daylight washing over her, a sweet balm over her bruised soul. "Sarah!" A familiar voice broke through the serene silence. It was Jake, running toward her with wide eyes and a beaming smile, as if he had been waiting for her return all along. "Jake!" She gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks as they wrapped around each other, the lingering shadows of her past dissipating. "I was so scared you wouldn't come back," he whispered, warmth flooding through her at the sound of his voice. "I won't let anything come between us again," she promised. The past remained an element of her story, yet here, under the bright sky, hope shimmered anew. As they walked away from the echoes of darkness behind them, Sarah realized part of her journey lay not in avoiding shadows but in dancing with them, embracing her truth. The shadows had taught her lessons, forged strength in adversity, but they would never haunt her again. She held on to Jake's hand tighter, feeling the sun's warmth seep into her soul. Life sparkled with endless possibilities. And though whispers lingered like echoes in her mind, she understood now, true strength was born from acceptance and resolve. "Mom, look!" Jake shouted, pointing to the horizon where the sun broke in brilliant hues. "Yeah, buddy," Sarah smiled, breathless with hope. "Let's chase that light together." And with that promise, they moved forward, leaving the shadows behind, into a new, endless dawn. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible stories like this one. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and keep us thriving. Don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this shocking conclusion. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful ending. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.